Hi guys, this is Maeve Caldwell
and Alex Carlton,
Dave Postly, and Lexi Postly.
and we watched the movie Iron-Jawed Angels, which is about women's suffrage in the early 20th century.
Here's our presentation.
This is a brief overview of Iron-Jawed Angels. Two girls passionate about women's suffrage, Alice Paul and Lucy Burns, decide to ask the National American Women's Suffrage Association if they can go to DC and start their own campaign for women's suffrage. The National American Women's Suffrage Association doesn't really cooperate with them, so they decide to start their own party called the National Women's Party, or the NWP. They had a bunch of peaceful protests, but eventually go to jail because of the people that don't agree with them. They went on a hunger strike, and from their actions, they eventually got women's voting rights.
So the first key concept that we thought our movie related to was Key Concept 6.2, and it stated, the emergence of an industrial culture in the U.S. led to both greater opportunities for and restrictions on immigrants, minorities, and women. And we thought it related to the subtitle number 1, which said international and internal migrations increased both urban and rural populations, but gender, racial, ethnic, religious, and socioeconomic inequalities abounded, inspiring some reformers to attempt to address these inequalities. We thought that it kind of related to this key concept because the campaign for women helped open up greater opportunities for women, like voting rights, and how these two women helped release voting restrictions on women. And it also related to the two groups, the National Women's Suffrage Association and the National Women's Party, which was founded by the two main characters, Alice and Lucy. And they were both inspired to reform and basically recreate women's rights and how women would be treated with voting restrictions, and just how women could be seen as in the political and government society and what roles they could have on them.
So the second key concept that we thought it related to was Key Concept 7.1, which states that the governmental, political, and social organizations struggle to address the effects of large-scale industrialization, economic uncertainty, and related social changes such as urbanization and mass migration. So the movie more specifically related to subtitle 2, which talks about progressive reformers responding to economic instability, social inequality, and political corruption by calling for government intervention in the economy, expanded democracy, greater social justice, and conservation of natural resources. And in the movie, the president, at the time, Woodrow Wilson, he refused to listen and reform the issues of women's suffrages. So he basically ignored the women when they were trying to gain a voice in the government. And there's political corruption when the reformers were picketing outside the White House, and they were put in prison for obstructing traffic when in reality they did absolutely nothing, and they just needed an excuse to put them in jail.
So for the most important historical piece of information, we thought it was the hunger strike that the women took part in when they were in jail. And this was important because it was a non-violent protest, and it was really effective. And so basically the women just once they were in jail, Alice started it, and she just stopped eating, and the government was saying how they can't let her die from not eating because then she would become a martyr for the cause, and that would make it more known to the public, and everyone would give it more support. And so what happened was one of the guards was a woman, and she started to feel bad for these ladies that were fighting for women's rights because she was a woman as well, so she wanted rights. So she gave Alice a piece of paper and a pen, and she wrote a little note about what was going on in the jail. And then when her friend's husband came to visit her, the friend gave the note to her husband, and the husband kind of gave the note to the newspapers and exposed what was happening, which created huge publicity for the cause, and it kind of put the government in a bad position and made them kind of give them rights, basically. So that was one of the huge parts of the movie, because it basically got them rights, but it was in a non-violent way. So we thought that this movie was a good learning tool because it was really historically correct, and it was really engaging. Like, we found it very interesting when we were watching, and I actually wanted to know what was going to happen. Like, for example, when they were in the prisons and they were doing the hunger strike, I was like interested to see what was going to happen next, and it was like it really showed the true hardships and horrors of the women in prison. And an example of it being very historically correct is when all the men in the government were taking the vote as to whether they thought women should have certain rights. Um, Someone comes in and delivers a message, like a telegram from the Tennessee delegate's mother, and it doesn't show us what it says, but it's obvious that what was said in the message like changes his mind, because they originally have red and yellow roses on their jackets, and that tells like which way they're gonna vote basically and which side they're on. And the man had a red rose on, which normally means that he's gonna vote against women, but after reading the message he votes for women, and that really did happen in real life. So we just thought that like the details were really accurate, and that makes it a good learning tool because it doesn't distort your thought of like actual history. It keeps it in like to what happened in reality.
Thanks for watching our video. Bye!